time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. Miss Liz is back, and that's right. It is Thursday, and I have an incredible guest here. I was on his show a couple months ago, and now he's on my show. That's what we do. We flip and we make incredible tea and pancakes together. So I have the incredible Tony Lynch joining me today on Tea Time. But before we get all that going, we're gonna get you over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel. Subscribe, ring that little doorbell, and you'll be notified when all these tea times go live, and you can watch them at any pace, anytime, anywhere that you'd like to. And then we're going to get the disclaimer going. We're going to get the bio. We're going to get Tony in here. We're going to spill a strong tea on tough, equipped, and adequate. I got it right. I had trouble with that word. I was practicing all afternoon with that word, but I got it. And we're going to serve a different type of tea in this house. That's why we do not serve a beverage. So you do not have to drink tea. You can have coffee. You can have a glass of wine. You can have whatever you're comfortable drinking. So let's get started. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz and myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of vary. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that the show is engaging in discussions, forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. Now, a little bit on my guest. Well, my guest is a friend. He's not just a guest. He's a friend, and he's family. So Tony Lynch is the founder of the nonprofit Memories of Us Limited, Grief Support for Men, and the Global Grief Network. Host of the podcast, Grief Let's Talk About It podcast, and the #1 international bestseller author, My Journey into the Grief World started when he lost his son from unknown causes, followed by his mother 2 years later, which eventually, through some really bad choices, led him to lose everything for the 18th time in his life. He fell into a dark place. Eventually, he began to plan out his suicide, in which he was almost successful. But as they say, that was his aha moment. That's where he started to understand the process of grief, just from a different perspective, from a man's perspective. And since then, he has followed a path of creating space for men like himself to be supported, and began to process and understand his grief. So let me get Tony in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Tony.
Hello, my friend. How you doing?
I am doing good. And yourself?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me on your show today. Excited day.
It is a pleasure. So, Tony, I'm going to take you back to when you were a little guy. So who was Tony as a little guy, and who's Tony now?
Tony as a little guy, I was like a little artist, right? I loved drawing, right? I taught myself how to draw when I was around 3 or 4 years old. I think I made a distinguish between stick people and real people. And if my mother was around, she'll tell you that ever since I made that that distinction, I began to teach myself how to draw people, right? So I would remember things as a young child, and I would sit down and I would draw cartoons. You know, I loved He-Man and G.I. Joe and Transformers, and I always loved drawing them. And my little sister, she loved My Little Pony. So I used to draw her comic books for her, and I love riding bikes with my friends, um, just typical kid stuff. And at the age of 6, my life changed, and I had lost my innocence, which changed everything. Although I'm still my mother's son, I I had another side to me that that had started coming out, and I guess that's where my life really started to take a turn into a really dark segment. On one side, it was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. On one side, I'm my mama's son. I'm a straight A student in school. Um, on the other side, I was um, I was different. I had an understanding of the world at the age of 6 that there was people that was capable of doing really bad things to people. So in the same sense, I'm still trying to live a kid life, but I'm very cautious about how I move. I became very protective of myself and my younger sister, and it was just something that I just never talked about, but I've always carried it with me.
So, Tony, did your family ever know what happened to you when you were 6?
I told him. No one believed me, and so at the age of 6, it dawned on me that no one's ever going to believe that this just happened to me. So now on the other side of that, I can now use it to my advantage. Because since no one believed that it happened to me, well, that meant that I can do something about it. And either one or two things are going to happen. Either the person that's doing it to me, when I do this to him, he's either going to have to reveal what he did to me.
Yeah.
It's going to turn out bad for him, or he's going to have to keep it a secret and have to heal. So he chose not to say anything, but he also stopped. He never messed with me after that again.
So,
And
Tony, do you believe that nobody believed you because you were a man?
yeah, and that's what it was. I was actually told, boy, no, nobody does that to young boys. You need to look out for your sister, right? You need to make sure that don't know. And I was like, okay, all right. Well, I'm telling you what he just did to me, right? Even my father, no one ever believed that people were capable of doing that to young boys, right? It was like the neighborhood secret. Everybody knows about the guy, but no one's going to do anything. So when you say anything, it has to be hush hush. We don't talk about the child molester in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
right? And that's what it made me feel like. But again, there's ways that you can look at that, and in the way that I did, and go, okay, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe me, but I'm definitely going to use it to my advantage. So I did. When he tried it the last time, I put a knife in his stomach,
Oh,
and I told him, I said, "Go ahead, scream. Go ahead, please." Because then, when you scream, you're going to have to explain why I'm up here with no clothes on at the age of 6 years old, and why your pants are down, and why you have a knife in your stomach. Or you can leave me alone. You never touch me again. You just have to deal with that, because you can't go to the hospital, because you're going to have to tell them that I did it. And when you tell them that I did it, well, I'm going to tell them what you did to me.
yeah.
So he never messed with me after that again. But it did change me. It definitely changed me. I vowed to never let anyone ever hurt me again, and or my sister. And I stayed true to that. No one ever hurt me ever again. But it did turn me into something. If I thought that you was going to try to hurt me, it made me devious. I was going to get you before you got me.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about when I was on your show, right? Is that flight or fight, you
Right.
know?
And I had no fear. I mean, when you've been thrown into a world of where you can see people that are capable of doing bad things, you're going to have to learn how to survive. because now, when the people that you trust that look just like you are capable of doing these things to you, well, you're going to have to learn how to maneuver in that world. And sometimes you're going to have to make decisions that you may not like, but they're necessary in order for you to survive. So I chose to survive the best way I knew how. And I got really good at it. I got really good at it. So as far as fight or flight, the flight in me was not there anymore. I just refused to run. And I figured if I stood up and fought, I can make people leave me alone.
Yeah.
I can build a reputation. People go, oh no, that dude, hey, that little dude will fight you. That little dude's crazy. You better be careful. He'll beat you with a brick. He'll hit you with a baseball bat or something like that. I was that kid. Yeah, I'll just hit me if you want to, and you was bigger than me. My mom always told me if you can't beat him, you better pick up something and hit him upside the head. So I did. But she right upside the head with a brick and keep it moving.
Well, we talked about that when I was on the show, right? Is I'm going to get you before you get me.
I'm gonna get you before you get me, right? Because you got to remember when you're that tall, right? When you're that small and everything, and everybody in your world is bigger than you. What do you expect? How do you approach that situation?
Yeah.
You have to learn how to protect yourself, or you're going to be a victim. And I'm not much on playing the victim. I'm not. So I learned how to fight. Luckily, my mother, she was a good fighter. So she taught me how to be tough. She nurtured me and raised me the best way she knew how. So I am very appreciative of those things. But there was damage done. There was definitely damage done, because you got to remember, when parents are raising children, there's no blueprint, and sometimes the oldest one is the one you experiment with the most.
Yeah.
And plus I'm a young boy, so in the eyes of your parents, I got to be harder on him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a child, so needless to say, I got my butt whipped a lot.
But we grew up in that time, right? Where
Right,
it was you go get your whip, and you want to make
Oh
sure
yeah, you got to go pick the
sure
switch
that
off the
it doesn't
tree.
hurt, right? You're like, oh, is that going to hurt me?
Yeah, you got to go pick your switch off the tree. Like, no, I don't want to pick the switch off my tree. What makes you think it? No. And and they played a cruel joke on you, right? So when they say, go over there and get the switch off the tree, you pick your own, you come back with the little small one. Well, what they forgot to tell you is that they already have one.
Yeah.
So why you gonna have me go over there and pick the switch that I want, and you already have one? I feel like you set me up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah, they always had one ready, and just in case you didn't pick a good one, right? They had that other one waiting for you. So,
and for some odd reason, was yours braided too?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I know I wasn't the only one. But like, oh, where'd you get that one from? That's nothing like the one I picked.
Yeah.
Nothing at all, right?
Yeah.
So now.
So Tony, I want to get into your tea. Your tea that you gave me was tough, equipped, and adequate. So why those 3 words for your tea, Tony?
Well, tough. The life that I've lived was not for the weak of heart. The journey of becoming Tony, I had to equip myself in many, many ways. And in order to survive, but also to become the best version of myself. So, throughout your life, you have to equip yourself with certain things because of the different versions of yourself that you have to become.
Yeah.
Throughout the journey, throughout the process. And what was the last one?
You gave me equipped.
Well, equipped or adequate.
Adequate. That's what it was. Adequate.
So in this version of myself now, working with men, adequate, it seems appropriate because I am in a space where I'm effective in helping other men like myself. So adequate, yes. Tough, equipped, and adequate.
So let's get into that, Tony. How you became the founder of the nonprofit Memories of Us Limited. So how did that start? How did that come about?
Uh, well, I'm a, it started, well, the idea started after my son passed away. My son passed away in 2016. Um, June, June 16th is when he passed away of 2016. And as a father, I think that's where everything kind of started. And the doors began to open through a couple years of isolation, right? You know, because I didn't I didn't know what was going on. My world had changed. I had this whole complete idea that I was going to be with my son for the rest of my life, right? You know, to raise him and then get him prepared to be out into the world. And when he passed away, all of those things were gone. You know, all my hopes and dreams of being a good father and wanting to see how my son turned out, things like that. Those things were gone. Then shortly after that, my mother passed away 2 years after that, on July 25th of 2018, on my grandmother's birthday. And then from there, you know, the reality of my life, I'm an orphan in this world. And then the harsh reality of it was I'm the last of my bloodline.
Oh,
There's
wow.
nobody else after me. So when you have to look at those things, and I still have my younger sister, but my younger brother is gone. But my father passed away when my son was 6 months old. My younger brother passed away when my son was 9 months old. Um, and so with the compilation of all of those different things, you know, you tend to look at life in this truth. The reality of it is I'm alone in this world. I have my younger sister, but when I leave this place, I'm still going to be alone. She can't come with me. And walking the path that I've walked has been a very, very lonely one. Very lonely. Everything I had to learn how to navigate on my own. I didn't have anyone to come and say, "Hey, Tony, you know, let me help you out with these things and this, that, and the other." I mean, I've had some pretty good people to come along to give me a hand up, but for the most part, it was just me. And so after after that, after my mother passed away, I tried to run. Didn't know where I was running to, but I knew I wanted to run. Right? You know, the flight or fight. Right? You know,
Right?
I
Yeah,
want to
you
run away
run.
from the pain. Right? You know what I'm saying? And that's the only time in my life I can ever remember wanting to run away from something that I couldn't get away from.
Yeah.
And that pain, that deep embedded pain that was inside of me just would not let me go. So what I did, I started, you know, I was doing online dating at the time. I was dating this girl. She lived out in South Dakota. I said, you know what? I just need to get out of Colorado. So maybe I'll move out here to South Dakota, you know, and start this life, you know, start over something different and things like that. And I got out there, and 3 months later, I had lost everything. I had my own personal gym, started my personal training company. I had just left. I had just left Colorado. I had lost everything. Everything. I am now in a foreign place in the middle of winter with nothing. And now I have to get rid of everything that I have, all of my gym equipment, um, everything that I thought that I would need, you know, to have a good household. And I had to get rid of everything. All I had was my clothes and a couple of weights that I had saved. And then from there, you know, I drove back to Colorado, you know, with my tail in between my legs, not knowing what I was going to do. I just knew I had some friends that was like, "Come on back, Tony, come on back." Their hearts were in good places, but the reality of it was I'm a grown man. Um, sleeping on other people's couches. That doesn't last too long.
Yeah.
Doesn't last too long at all. And their intentions was good, but the reality of it is that it's just a reality, you know. At some point you have to go.
Yeah.
Right? Because if they have a family, you know, the wife is going to be looking at them like, why is he still sleeping on the couch? You know, and they have kids.
Yeah.
Now, I've never heard anybody or anything like that. And these people I've known for quite some time, but it's just the reality of it. So eventually I would have to jump from one couch to another couch, sleep in my car, right? You know, and sometimes I would just go sit down by the lake till I would have to go to work the next following day. And then, you know, take my paycheck and go get a hotel room so I could sleep in the bed, and, you know, and this whole time, no one knew. I was good at hiding that part of my life. And what ended up happening is that I was so tired. I was so tired. And I couldn't explain the tired. And I thought to myself, yeah, I don't want to do it. And see, when you go from a place where you see so many things happen, you have this interpretation, like, you know, at some point, you know, at some part of you, you're afraid to take your life, right?
Yeah.
That fear was not there anymore. I just said, you know what? I think the world would be a better place without me. I wouldn't have to go through the things that I'm going through right now. I wouldn't have to try to figure out, well, my life has fallen. So I began to plan out my suicide. And I did it in such a way no one knew what was going on. I was able to put on this mask. And at that time I was working out and looking good and everything. So people never asked me how I was doing, right? You know what I'm saying? No one ever asked me. So I was like, all right, you're not gonna ask, I'm gonna keep this up, right? You know. And so what I started to do, I started playing 3D chess with my friends. You know, I had friends that would call me up on certain days. Tony, how you doing, man? Doing good. So when I started realizing what they were doing, I stopped answering the phones on the day that they would call me.
Oh, okay.
Right. You know, I stopped. They go, oh man, do you want to go fishing or something like that? And if it was on the weekend, nah, man, let's go during the week. So they got used to me going during the week. They got used to me not answering the, you know, calling them during the week and not on the weekend. So when I realized that I had a consistent opening on the weekends, I said, I got my opening. So I had told myself I had packed up a few clothes, went to work, and I had my bag in the back of the car. People's like, "Oh man, we're gonna see you Monday," and this, yeah. And I took off, headed up to Utah, and I drove up there, got myself a hotel room that night. The next day, I went and fished at the river, and, you know, pretty much said my goodbyes, asked for forgiveness, you know, for what I was about to do. No one's going to be looking for me, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to be looking for my vehicle. I've just paid up my vehicle for like the next 4 months. You're not going to come looking for it, right? If it's not a delinquent, what you going to come looking for me for, right? Yeah. I just bought myself this gun, this 45, and I bought myself some hollow tips and some hollow points. And I said, you know what? If you're going to do it right. Right? Do it right. You know, don't have stuff. Do it. Okay, cool. So here I am. I'm up there, and I was going, yeah, please forgive me for what I'm about to do, but I can't do it no more. Mom, grandma, dad, brother, son, hold a place for me, because I'm coming to come see you soon. Sunday night, checked out at a hotel. I went over, drove out to the middle of the Moab Desert. There's nothing out there. It's just me, the mountains. and the nice guy, and I just sat there for a minute, and I remember 2 seconds away from pulling the trigger, and his voice had called out to me. Now, although I had made this decision, the last thing that I wanted to do was do it in front of anyone and scar them.
Yeah.
Right? Plus, no one knew where I was. I mean, what do you follow me for, right? No, you're home somewhere, right? And when that happened, like clear as day, Liz, like we're talking right now, clear as day, Tony, scream. I was like, ooh. I took the gun and I threw it in the front part of the vehicle, and I sat there for a minute, hiding in between the door and the front seat of the car, looking around. And I was like, so who's out here with me? And it got quiet. So I reached in and turned on the lights to the vehicle, and there's nothing else out there. So I jump up and I'm looking around. I didn't see no cars come up back here, and I'm the only one out here, right? That should have been my first indication, but it wasn't. I was like, somebody followed me. So I'm looking around, and it's still nothing out there. In that moment, I sat back down. I said, you know what? It's my mind playing tricks on me. I'm finished. I'm gonna finish this. And the voice said, hey, psst, no, let me talk to you for a second. Just clear some talking to you, Liz.
Wow.
For a second. I was like, what do you mean? Who are you? That doesn't matter. Let me show you something about your life. And in that moment, I started having a conversation with this voice. Like, you don't want to have a conversation with me. I'm a nobody. No one's going to care. Just let me go.
Yeah.
I said, no. I said, look, I get it. Whatever, right? But what do you want out of me? And the voice said, got something for you. And it proceeded to say, let's read the book of Tony. And I began to read this book of Tony out of my whole entire life. And I wanted to be the victim so bad to justify what I was about ready to do. What about this time when I was 6 years old? Yeah. Had you not gone through that, you wouldn't be able to help the people that you come across to. Well, what about the 18 times I've been homeless out of my life? What about the 24 years I spent in the gangs? What about the 5 years I did in prison for a crime I never committed? What about all the friends that I've lost along the way? What about the people who tried to kill me? What about the the women who hurt me, who tried to hurt me and things like that? Yeah, I know. Yeah. But had you not gone through this, you wouldn't be who you are right now. Well, I'm a nobody. Yeah, but no, you're not. And I couldn't justify it anymore. And because everything that I found on me, right, and said, no. I was going, well, what about all these times and things like that? But I never left you. The time that you needed me, I put you in a place and made sure that you had food in your stomach and a roof over top of your head. I said, let's look at this, Tony. And I began to dig deeper inside of me. That's when it dawned on me. It was my gift. My gift was talking to me. It was letting me know that everything that I had gone through was leading up to this moment and identifying itself to me, making itself known. And then all of a sudden, it's like a computer, right? You know what I'm saying? A computer. I began to, it was like all of this stuff downloaded on me. I was like, what is this stuff right here? And then instead of thinking of taking my life, I'm going, I need to go back to Colorado. So I drove all the way back to Colorado, right? And I'm driving and all of this stuff is coming through. And I remember going over to my buddy's house and I was sitting in this garage and I was like, man, I need to go get some help. He goes, what do you mean? I said, dude, if I told you right now, you're going to be upset with me. I said, but I'm going to be honest with you. I just drove all the way back from Utah and I wasn't supposed to be here right now because I was going to take my life. My buddy looked at me. He swallowed. He was Tony. I was like, yeah. I was like, step back. He said, okay. What do you want to do? I said, I need to go find some help because I don't know what this thing is, right?
Yeah.
But I need to go find some help. And I went out and I was looking for support groups, and I found variety of support groups, right? None of them geared towards men. They had, there was some that was like, oh, for parents and children, and then for women and children and things like that. So I would go to the one where I think that men would show up, and I'd go there. I'm like, there's no men in these groups.
Yeah, where are they all hiding?
Yeah, where the men at? Right? I'm in a room full of women, and then and they looking at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm not talking to you. Not doing it. It dawned on me, and I would leave, and something said, "Do you get it now?" Yeah, there's no men in those groups.
There's nobody in.
Right? And they said, "No, do you see the other side of it?" I go, "Yeah, there's no men in the groups. You don't see it just yet. Let's go to this other group." I go to that other group. Same thing. There's no men. I walked out of that group. I said, I see it now. I get it. What do you get? There's no men in the groups because men aren't going to talk around women. Why? Then it dawned on me again. Because we're providers and protectors. And that began that journey of understanding. And I said, you know what? I went back to my buddy's house, and we were sitting around. I was pacing around his garage, and I'm like, I couldn't let this thing go, right? And I told my buddy, I said, you know what? I'm going to start a nonprofit. He goes, oh, yeah, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to start a nonprofit to help men like myself. Then I argued with myself for the better part of 9 months after that. I was like, I'm not doing it. And the voice just wouldn't let me go. Tony, do it. I'm like, And my heart wouldn't let it go. It became this pull. I was like, no. It was like smacking it. Get off me. Get go somewhere. Right? And that's what I'm going somewhere, right? But I couldn't let it go. I could not let it go. I didn't understand it. But I knew I couldn't let it go. And then I made the decision. I started making phone calls because I've never done anything like this before. I've never started a nonprofit. What do I know about doing stuff like this, right? So I made a phone call, and the guy asked me some questions. And I was like, well, I don't have any of those things, right? All I have is this idea. He goes, well, you called me back when you got a working nonprofit without a 501(c)(3). I stopped and I was like, hold on, let me get this straight. You want me to build a nonprofit without actually having a nonprofit? Is that what you're saying? He goes, yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. I said, okay. So I stopped and I was like, this man is out of his mind. This man is out of his mind. And then, I'm such an introvert, right? But I knew there was something about it. And I was like, you know what? I told my buddy, I said, man, I need to, I'm going to do this. I just don't know how I'm going to do it. So now, granted, for the type of work that I was doing was trying to get into, there's no blueprint for it. There was no men's groups out there. There was no nonprofit, based around men that I could follow. Right. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to do this? Right. And, lo and behold, opportunity started to present itself. I began to go into these little networking events, and I began to talk about my nonprofit as if it already existed. And then I began to just speak this language that I wasn't familiar with, but I was very familiar with. Right. And what I mean by that is as if the language is already in me. And it just flowed out of me, although I couldn't tell you where it came from. I knew how to hold space before I even knew what holding space was. I knew what mindful, I knew how to be mindful even before I knew what being mindful was. I knew things that I could not explain to you. And so now these opportunities are presenting itself, and I'm going to networking events, I'm going to seminars, and then I got connected to FOTI, Family Leadership Training Institute, and I began to go there, and I just began to just speak as if this nonprofit already existed. And and people's like, "What is that?" I was like, "It's a men's grief support nonprofit." And Memories of Us was born through that. And all I knew is that this vision that I have to follow it. And I began to walk that path. I messed up pretty good too, I did. I messed up pretty good, but of course, you're not going to be good at everything. Appreciate you, Adam. I definitely appreciate you. You're not going to be good at everything, right? You know what I'm saying? Coming out there. I mean, you may have an idea, right? You know what I'm saying? That you're going to be perfect, but you're not. That's just the reality of it was. And I fumbled pretty good, but I fumbled into the position that I was going into. And then, to make things, even a little bit more crazier, I was like, man, this information, I'm gonna get my certifications, right? Because if this is true, and this is really what I'm supposed to do, it's going to reveal itself. So the first thing I did, I got my peer recovery coach certification. I went straight to the test. I said, I'm not reading no book. I'm not reading no book. No. If this is real, you know what I'm saying?
I don't need to read. I just need to do.
Read no stinking book. Who needs some blueprint? Who needs a blueprint to put this thing together? I went and took that test, and I aced it. Couldn't tell you where the information came from. And then I said, I think I'm going to get my suicide intervention certification. So I did. I went online and I found this certification program. I said, I ain't gonna read no book. If this is for real, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't know where this information is coming from. If this is for real, then it shouldn't have no problems with passing the test.
Yep.
So I went straight to the test and I aced it. I said, I think I may be in trouble. This is a little bit more than what I actually thought about, right? So then I said, you know what? I'm gonna do something different. I'm going to take my mental health first aider and get that certification. And they did. And I got that one too. I said, no.
Did you read the book?
I didn't read the book neither. I was like, no, I'm not reading the book, right? But this information just kept pouring out of me. I was like, well, this makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense. Then I aced it, right? And I was like, whoa, I may be in a little bit of trouble because I may just be a little bit crazy, but I may just be a little bit smart too, right? And so now I said, you know what? I'm gonna get my mental health certification. Not to read the book. I went and got it. I got that one. So then this thing called grief kept popping up. Now, mind you, I know nothing about grief. Nothing whatsoever. I just know what's been downloaded into me that's been tugging on my heart and pushing me in these different directions and things like that. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna get my grief educators certification. And I did. I pondered that one for probably about a month or so before actually doing it. But then I finally did it. And I got it. And I was like, okay. I said, God, what are you trying to show me? And then I started just pondering a little bit. I said, well, you want me to work with men. If they're anything like me, this is going to be impossible. So at the time I was going to church and people kept telling me, man, it's going to be hard. Tony, men don't talk. Tony, you may not be successful at this, but you may be successful at something else. So then I started talking to other people who had tried these things and failed, but had been redirected into their own path. I was looking, I was like, I don't know.
So we have a question here, Tony, from Adam. It says, I have a question. What's the difference between mental health in youth when in school compared to mental health in youth in the football world?
I would say that there's not too much of a difference when it comes down to mental health in schools and things like that. You have to look at the environment that they're in. They're in a learning environment, whereas one is more of a competitive environment. So, you know what I'm saying? The mental health, honestly, when it comes down to mental health in both of those, there's really not too much of a difference. It really isn't. One is a more competitive walk, and more is the stress of wanting to do good in school, right? You know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, these days in school, they've made it easier for kids to not have to compete for the grades. And when it comes, and that same scenario can be played out on the football field, basketball, any sort of sports um, environment. There's really no competitiveness in it. Everybody gets a trophy nowadays. So what ends up happening, you have to go to outside of that environment and look at the people that they're around. You have to ask the individual in the youth, you know, especially if they've been bullied or they coming from a household where the parents are abusive or alcoholics or drug addicts and things like that. So those things do play a factor in it. And youth have a way of showing their cards. And you, as an adult, have to be able to read the signs. But also, if you come from a place where you struggle with your own, look outside of yourself and ask yourself, is this familiar? And if it is, it's something to explore. It's something to be concerned about,
Yeah.
right? Because what's happening now exactly. So you have to look at that, Adam. If you used to be a bullied a lot, which turned you to a point and you attempted suicide, imagine your youth in those same situations. They're going to pretty much the same things. You have to look at the points of where you got to that point and being able to look at it from the outside looking in to the people that you're around. So
Tony, I want to kind of take what Adam put in there for the football, because grief and mental health is like a football game,
mhm.
it's like the quarterbacks and all of that, right? We're on the field and we're fighting this battle. Who's going to win it, right? Who's going to get that touchdown? So if you had to describe your grief as a football game, how would you describe it?
My mental health was the quarterback. My trauma was the tight ends. My addiction to alcohol was my defensive lineman, right? So, in the same sense, my grief was the running back. It was my sneak play, right? It was the one I never expected.
Yeah.
It's that one thing. And so what ended up happening is that my trauma and everything is trying to protect me from the things, you know what I'm saying, to keep me from falling apart.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is that my mental health said, hey, grief, here's the ball. Go up the middle. We got you.
Yeah.
Now, my grief went up the middle. And what ended up happening is that it unfolded everything else that was trying to protect me. And it left me wide open to run. I have a destination. I have this grief that's going down the field, spilling out everything that is me. There's no more hiding anymore. Eventually, the education that came along with it was my touchdown. And every play since then, I've scored.
See, I wanted to go into the football game with you because men would understand that, right? Men understand football. And,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to go down a different avenue in order to understand it. And, football is a good way of explaining it because you were able to, all the different players, all the different uh, locations of where the players were. But you were
Mhm.
also a football player in your youth years. And that's why I wanted to go back to the football because Adam talked about the youths and football. So I wanted to go
Mhm.
back into that and understand what football means to you, Tony.
Well, it wasn't football; it was martial arts.
Oh,
Yeah. So
okay. Well, then I got the wrong Tony Lynch.
no, it wasn't football. I mean, I did play football, but I mean, I wasn't the basketball player or the football player. I was martial arts, mixed martial arts, and boxing. So I can use it from a better analogy coming from that perspective, right? So, say for instance, and I'm gonna use this now this MMA analogy when I was fighting, and hopefully people can kind of follow along with that. Imagine being a fighter, in a ring, and the person that you're fighting, you can't see. You're throwing everything that you can, elbows, knees, headbutts, jujitsu, and everything. But every time you grab him, he's gone. Every time. You know what I'm saying? But every time you turn around, he's getting you too. This thing is whooping the crap out of you, right? Until you get to a point to where you're ready to tap. Ready to tap. You're telling the coach, throw in the towel, man. I'm battered, beaten, and bloody, and I'm not gonna win this one. And the coach says, hey man, wipe your head. You got a little bit more left in you. And you get up and you realize that the person that you're fighting is yourself. It's your inner child. It's everything that you've ever gone through in your whole entire life that's begging you to come back and pick it up and begin to heal. So if I would have to put it into an analogy, that would be the analogy I put it into. You know, sometimes you have to know when to slow down, and come up with a different game plan. You're not going to win every fight. Not going to win every fight, but you can win the war. And what I mean by that, some fights you have to go within yourself and you have to surrender to the fight. And what that means is that you have to look at your younger version of yourself and become the comforter that you needed when you were going through it. So you're not gonna always win, those fights and everything. You're gonna get your butt whipped a few times going through it. The key to it is knowing when to sit down, knowing when to stand back up, right? And not expecting people to come save you. But you can be that for yourself.
So Tony, you wrote a story in an anthology. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, your chapter in that book?
Oh yes. So I co-authored a book, and it's called My Hardest Battle, or my deepest, my
My,
biggest.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's called My Hardest Battle, My Unseen Blessings.
Yes, My Hardest Battle. See, I wrote the doggone chapter, and I can't even remember it. But I have the book over here. It's the Relentless, Volume 1. So last year, I was approached by a friend, Nelson Beltajar. Big shout out to him. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to co-author this book with so many amazing people. And he goes, man, I think your story is going to be amazing. Let's put it in there. He goes, and I got several stories, right? And then goes, which one you want to do? And I started shooting them stuff. And he goes, man, we could, what about, I was like, you know what? I want to talk about the loss of my son, because that was my biggest battle, but also my unseen blessing. Because had I not lost him, I don't think I'd be doing the work that I'm doing today. So through my heart, my deepest pain, I found my blessing. So I wrote this, and gave him this chapter. I've never written a book before. Who would have thought? I'm saying, Tony, write a book? What? No, right? This is crazy. Way outside of what I thought I was going to do. And so we wrote this. I put that chapter in there. We launched the book, and we get the notification that morning, and where Nelson reached out to us and it's like, hey, we're now Amazon best-selling authors. And I remember laying there, and I was telling my girlfriend, I said, wow, I'm an Amazon best-selling author. Holy crap. Huh? 2 hours later, we get another message. Hey, scratch that title. So I'm thinking to myself, what done fell through? Right? What just happened?
They made a mistake. Oh no.
Right? Did somebody make a mistake? Oh my God. Okay. So now I'm trying to think to myself, how do I backpedal out of this? Right? How do I tell the girlfriend, like, yeah, no, it didn't make it, right? It fell through. He goes, you guys are now #1 international Amazon best-selling authors. This is your new title. Own it. Ms. Liz, when I tell you the sense of humbleness that came across me, it was truly amazing. I'm just a nobody from Virginia. I'm just a little poor boy from Virginia that just wanted to do something to help some other people. That's all, right? I'm not, look, I just wanted to help other men like myself, and now I'm a #1 international Amazon best-selling author. Huh? I just wanted to have conversations to show people that they weren't by themselves. That's why I started podcasting and things like that. Now I look at where I'm at right now, and I would say I didn't see this coming. I just wanted to live within my gift. I wanted to be a good servant, fulfill my contract with this world, right? I wanted to use what I had learned and help others. And here I am, international best-selling author. And I get to meet people like Miss Liz, and have them on my podcast and share stories, right? And I can come on Miss Liz's podcast and have a great conversation with her and share stories again, and help those who are watching, to give them hope. Because I would tell you, if you knew the person that I was and the person that I am now, you would understand why I'm humble. I've been humiliated. I've been corrected and redirected. I've been a fool several times. I've had to hold myself accountable for a lot of things that most people wouldn't even look at, relationships. I had trust issues. I've been molested. I've had people that I thought that was friends try to kill me. I went to prison for 5 years for a crime I never committed. I've been homeless over 18 times out of my life. Like, when I say homeless, I mean strictly I've lost everything. I've lost almost all of my friends. I've lost my parents. I've lost my younger brother. I've lost my son. I have 2 girls that, if they was to tell you the story, it would tell you a story of me being a deadbeat dad. Couldn't deny that. Only thing I would say, If you knew my life, you would know why that I didn't want them around. They were a hell of a lot safer being where they were than being with me. I've had my ass whipped by life, not by people, but by life. I've had to climb out of some pretty crappy places. But I sit here in front of you, Miss Liz, in front of everybody else, and I would say, if I can do it, I know you can too. And
So
that's what
Tony,
it comes from. That's where the etiquette and the everything else. This is where my tea comes from. I come from a place of understanding that I'm not perfect, and I knew what it took for me to get here. And I come from a place of understanding. I want to help those other men out there like myself and say, hey, look here, brother, I will walk with you. I may not understand everything that you're going through, but if you will allow me to walk with you and share some of what I have to give you the strength to get through your days, allow me to do that, because I will give it to you freely, openly, and without any expectations. That's who Tony is today.
so Tony, you gave me the one word survivor for yourself, and now I get it because the book of Tony, you had to survive.
Yeah.
So what has that taught you over your lifespan about surviving?
Surviving um, is a temporary version of yourself. And what I mean by that, life will throw challenges to you, put you in situations to where you would have to adapt, survive. You have to survive, right? And as a man, we know this word all too well. Now, when you come from a background the way that I do, that's all you know, right? You don't see the other side of life, things like that. Surviving means that I have to become a version of myself that you may not know. But it doesn't matter, because if I don't survive, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Because everything and everyone out here around me, if I let down my guard, it's going to kill me. It's going to take me out. Now, I can give up. I can give up like so many other people did. And I wanted to, and like me, so many other times. Or I can take and look at the world and say, I want something different. I'm too tired to keep running. And I'm too old to keep fighting. So I need something different. And if I can't have something different, then take me. And then I realized that survivor that was in me, there was another version of Tony in there. And I began to look at life going, you know what, this brown dirt over here, it just needs some little tender love and care, right? You know what I'm saying? That's all. It just needs some little tender love and care, right? I need to till the dirt for a little bit. I need to throw some fertilizer in there, maybe plant some grass seeds. See what I was doing? I was looking at the other people. I was looking at the Joneses with their well-cut yards and their green grass and all of those different things, but I wasn't looking at myself. So the survivor in myself was waiting to be born into the Tony that I am today. And that survivor began to go, there's no more need for this. Let's take some time. Let's breathe. Let's learn how to grow some grass, Tony. And what that meant was I became the version of me that you see now. So that I went from survivor to thriving in a world that I felt that was trying to kill me. And in many cases, it was. Now I just live.
So Tony, what final message do you have for the men out there?
Not everybody is out trying to hurt you. So if you could, in your journey of grief, begin to live life as if you're not afraid of being hurt, the right people will come along and will walk with you if you allow them to. Allow them to, because there's people like me that have walked that path before. I would love for you to invite me into your space, just so you have somebody there with you. And if not, reach out to me. I know some other people that will too. But not everybody's out to try to hurt you.
So, Tony, if anybody wanted to reach you to be on your podcast, how could they reach you?
They can email me, TeA46@gmail.com, and just say, hey, possible podcast guest. We'll set up a time. I give you my calendar invite. You come on and we'll talk. Make sure that you're a good fit. And then when you come on, I would do my best to give you the best experience that you possibly have with a great conversation. And or they can go check it out and see how I do it. And the link that you have up there, thank you, Ms. Liz, for putting that up there. You can go there and check it out. And let me know what you think.
Yeah, I think that's the best way for anybody to see what Tony does and how engaging Tony is as a podcast host. Go over to his YouTube channel, give it a quick subscribe. Support for support. We grow together.
Yes.
Tony, I really want to thank you for sitting and having tea with me today, because it was a pleasure. Thank you to all the listeners and supporters. Thank you, Adam, for joining in. Thank you, Lakita, for your presence. And thank you for just supporting Tea Time, because without the support, we could not do this. Again, Tony, thank you so much. I really had a good pleasure with having this conversation with you. We will be back at 7 p.m. with Skull Games, where we're going to bring some awareness to sex trafficking and catching predators, because that's what we do with Tea Time. We bring some real good, strong awareness to topics that need to be spoken about. So until then, I will see everybody at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, keep sharing your tea and keep spreading the tea. Be yourself, and we can make a difference one cup of tea at a time.
Thank you for having me on.